let's begin creating our character's fireball projectile special attack. For this, we'll simply need an animation, some particles, and a 3D mesh for our projectile. In the link in the description, you'll find a link to freely download the assets and scripts or macro we created in this video. Feel free to download them and follow along, dissect the particle system, scripts, or macro, or to simply use the completed effect in your game or project. With both the effects from our energy and fireball complete, let's move on to creating the mechanics for our projectile. First, we'll need to create a spawn point on our character for the charging energy ball. So in our character's bones, let's create an empty game object to be a child of the character's right hand joint. With that complete, let's now begin creating our mechanics. If you followed along in our attacking, blocking, or player health tutorial videos, you can place this code within those scripts. However, for the sake of new viewers, we'll simply create a new script for our player's special attack functionality. We want to begin this script by creating a public game object variable, which we'll use to house our character. We want to next create an animator variable, which we'll use to get our character's animator component. We then want to create a public game object variable for both our energy ball and our fireball prefab. We next want to create a public transform variable to house the spawn point for our energy ball prefab. Let's next create two public float variables, one to represent the time before the character shoots the projectile, and one to represent the speed of the projectile once it spawns in our scene. Next, let's create a game object variable to house our spawned energy ball and another to house our spawned fireball. And lastly, let's create a public transform variable, which we'll use to house our opponent's location. Before we begin, let's first go over the logic that we want to create. First, we want to trigger our character's special attack animation. As that's being triggered, we want to then spawn our energy ball prefab. Once the character is ready to shoot the projectile, we want to then destroy our energy ball prefab and spawn our fireball prefab. Once our fireball is spawned, we want it to then move toward our opponent or simply in the forward direction. Once it's hit our opponent or the opponent has blocked or dodged our special move, we want the fireball to then be destroyed. With that said, in our start method, we want to first set our animator variable by getting the animator component from our character game object variable. Next, we'll create a public method, which we'll call special attack 01. And we'll start this method by setting the special attack parameter within our character's animation controller. Let's next instantiate our energy ball using our spawn point transform position and rotation as its location. And we also want to use that instantiated object to set the value of our energy ball game object variable. We next want to set our spawn energy ball as a child of our spawn point. This way our energy ball will appear to be in the hand of our character and move as our character's hand moves. So with the first part of our special attack complete, let's create a context menu for our special attack and then go back into Unity to test our functionality so far. So let's set our script on a new game object or our character and then use our game object and prefab to set our public variables. And let's also add our special attack function to our button. This way we can access it through our button or our context menu. We can see that our energy ball game object spawned in our scene and was also set to be a child of our spawn point game object. However, currently our particles take too long to start up, and by the time our energy effect is starting, the character is all ready to shoot their projectile attack. So in order to fix this, let's go to our energy ball prefab, and we want to check the pre-warm setting for our particle systems. This will allow our particles to appear as they're already starting by the time they spawn in our character's hand. Additionally, we can increase the speed of our simulation to quickly increase the speed of our particle effect. Before we go back and create the second part of our script, let's first look at our animation to determine the time the character shoots the projectile. If we look at our animation, we can see at the 20th frame of our animation, our character is ready to shoot the projectile. And we can use this time to place within our script when our energy ball should be destroyed and our projectile should spawn. With that said, let's go back into our script and create the second part of our special attack. Before we go back and make the second part of our special attack functionality, let's go into our fireball prefab and set its particle systems to pre-warm also. With that complete, let's now go back into our code editor. We'll begin by destroying our energy ball, and we'll use our charge time for the time delay for it to be destroyed. We next want to create a coroutine, which we're going to use to instantiate our fireball. The reason we're using a coroutine instead of a regular method is because we can use our wait for seconds method to delay the time in which the fireball instantiates into our scene. And let's adjust our wait for seconds time so that our fireball spawns slightly before our energy ball is destroyed. And at the end of our code for our special attack, we want to start our launch fireball coroutine. Before we continue, let's go into Unity and test our new functionality. And before we do that, we want to be sure that we set a value for our charge time. Since the charging pulses for our character end at around 22 frames, we'll simply place 1 as our charge time. We can see that our fireball now spawns right after our energy ball is destroyed and at the point the character is shooting the fireball in the animation. However, currently our fireball stays in place and isn't moving towards the target. So let's create the functionality to move our fireball towards the opponent. To do this, we'll need to use our update method. So let's create a new boolean, which we'll call canMoveFireball. And we want our coroutine to set this boolean to true after it spawns our fireball into our scene. So let's start our code within our update method with an if statement, and we'll use canMoveFireball as the variable it's checking for. Next, we'll need to create a float variable, which we'll call speed, and a vector3 variable, which we'll call enemy location. We'll use our speed variable in a combination with our fireball speed to set the speed in which the fireball is moving. And we'll use our enemy location variable to get to the current location of our opponent. We'll also need to create another vector3 variable, which we'll call fireball location. And that vector3 variable will house the current location of our fireball. However, since we can use our speed variable as well as our enemy location variable in other areas of our code, let's take them out of our update method and place them above our start method. And let's then set our speed variable in our update method using our time.delta time and our fireball speed. We next want to set our enemy location variable with the current position of our enemy. We then want to set our fireball location variable with the transform position of our spawn fireball object. We next want to use a vector3 move towards operation to set a new value for our fireball location vector3 variable. So we want to type fireball location equals vector3 dot move towards, and then parentheses. Within the parentheses, we'll place the current location of our fireball using our fireball location vector3 variable. Then we want to place the vector3 that it's moving towards, which is our enemy location vector3 variable. Lastly, we want to place our speed variable as its maximum distance delta. We next want to update the position of the spawn fireball. So we're going to type fireball.transform.position equals our fireball location vector3 variable. Lastly, we want our fireball to be destroyed if it's hit or is blocked by our opponent. For this, we'll say if our fireball location is equal to our enemy location, we want to then destroy our fireball. We also wanted to set our canMoveFireball variable to false and to set our speed back to 0. With that complete, let's go back into Unity and test out our results. We'll need to be sure to set our fireball speed, as well as setting our practice character and their position in the variable. For the sake of example, let's move our characters fairly far away from each other. We can see that our character now charges and launches the fireball towards their opponent. At this point, all of our functionality is complete, and we can now go back and make minor tweaks to things such as our particle effect, as well as adjusting the point in which our fireball is aiming for. Additionally, we can also place in code that will allow our enemy to avoid the fireball without having to hit or block it.
Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to be the first to see this and many other tutorials, game development tips, and free game asset giveaways.